All right, so big news if you are Canadian. A new law has recently been passed in British Columbia. It was proposed by the NDP Member of Parliament, Laurel Collins. There she is there, looking very proud of herself. This bill was supported across the board, by the way. It was supported by Conservatives, Liberals, and the NDP. It is Bill C-332. It is an act to amend the criminal code, and it takes aim specifically at controlling or coercive conduct. So, what does that mean? What that means is that you can now be criminally charged with offenses that did not exist prior to the passing of this bill. So let's talk about why that's such a problem and who it applies to and when it applies. So it takes aim specifically at people who are already in a relationship with each other. So the two people have to know each other. Quote, for the purposes of subsection 1, two persons are connected if they are current spouses, common law partners, or just dating partners. B, if they are members of the same household, even if they are estranged. So that is to say that they had a relationship at one point, they no longer do, and if they are relatives. But it seems to focus specifically on romantic relationships. Now let's talk about how it would apply. So, what is coercive or controlling conduct? Well, according to this law, it is conduct that would have a significant impact on a person. And I want to focus on B and C here. So, under this new law, it would be criminal if your conduct in a relationship had significant impact to the point where it causes the person's physical or mental health to decline, which is very general, by the way. I mean, this causes the person's physical or mental health to decline can basically describe every single toxic relationship people have. That's how general the language is here. And C, if it causes the person alarm or distress, once again, very general language, that has a substantial adverse effect on their day-to-day activities, including, and this is what I want to focus on, changes in or restrictions on their social activities or their communications with others. Now, up until now, this bill has been very general, but it's become oddly specific on social activities. So what does this mean specifically? Well, what this means is now the government is going to be involved in your toxic relationships. Now the government is going to come in and is going to tell you who is now going to be criminally charged in what might be described as a toxic relationship. And once again, whether it is or is not a toxic relationship is going to be for the government to decide. It's going to be the government's interpretation of that. So let's just say, for instance, because we're talking about social activities here, and I want you to focus on social activities and communication with others, which is now something you can be criminally charged for. If, let's say, you are in a relationship and you're a year in the relationship and you decide that your partner's drinking is much worse than you thought, you realize that they are an alcoholic. So you speak to your partner and you say, hey, listen, I think your drinking is a problem. And if you continue going to the bar every night or on the weekends and just getting hammered drunk to the point where you pass out, I don't think our relationship is going to work because I don't consider this appropriate behavior. That is an ultimatum. That's what you've just done. You've just given your partner an ultimatum. If your partner decides that they are going to stop drinking as a result of that because they don't want the relationship to end, that would be controlling and coercive behavior, and you could possibly be criminally charged for that. Why? Because it would mean that for them to no longer drink, there has been a change and a restriction on their social activity. It also means that those friends, their drink buddies, those friends some of whom they probably only see at the bar, they would no longer spend time with those friends. They would no longer be talking to those friends as much. So they would lose those connections. Why? Because of your ultimatum. That would mean that you are now criminally responsible, that you have had a substantial effect on your partner, and that you have changed or restricted their social activity. Now, some of you might be watching this and thinking, that's ridiculous, they wouldn't go that far. Then why did this bill pass? Why did this bill pass to begin with? We already have laws in Canada that say that if you physically harm your partner, you will go to prison. And this is a law that's commonly used against men. Because oftentimes unfortunately, when women commit violence against men, they're not held responsible to the same degree. But we already have laws in Canada that protect people against physical violence. But now what this law aims to do is it aims to push the government into your romantic relationship where the government becomes the arbiter of who was toxic and who wasn't in a relationship. Whereas before, it would just be your responsibility as an individual to walk away from a relationship that you felt was not right for you. Now it's the government is going to come in and do it for you. Another example I want to give is, let's just say, for instance, you decide, hey, I don't want you to hang out with your ex. That's a very common boundary a lot of people have in their relationship. If you give your partner that ultimatum, if you tell your partner, I don't want you to be friends with your ex anymore because I consider that to be inappropriate, what that means is that you have now participated, or you have now engaged in controlling and coercive conduct. Because for your partner to stop talking to their ex because you told them to stop talking to their ex, that would mean that you have changed and restricted their social activities, and that you have changed and restricted their communication with others, in this case, their ex. On principle alone, this bill should not have passed. And this is yet another example of the Canadian government failing its citizens, and it's shameful.